The rain had been falling for hours, turning the highway into a shimmering ribbon of silver, when a roaring motorcycle tore through the storm like a wounded animal refusing to die. On it rode a father whose heart had been carrying a storm far heavier than the one above him. His name was Cole Hartman, a man people once called fearless, until life gave him a daughter who would never hear the sound of his voice, the rumble of his bike, or the lullabies he whispered into the quiet darkness of her room. Her name was Sophie, and from the moment she was born completely deaf, Cole's world, built on engine roars, heavy metal concerts, and long highway runs, fell into a silence he didn't know how to survive. But on one ordinary night, inside a forgotten roadside diner, a waitress would pull out something that would change their lives in a way so unbelievable that Cole would remember that moment until his last breath. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, in strangers who become miracles, then please like, comment, share, and subscribe, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Cole had spent years trying to be both mother and father after losing Sophie's mom during childbirth. He had traded bar fights and long rides with his biker brothers for doctor visits, insurance battles, and overtime shifts. He learned sign language slowly, painfully, making mistakes that left him awake at night with guilt twisting in his gut. Sometimes he would just sit beside Sophie's crib, staring at her tiny hands while the silence around him felt like a punishment he couldn't understand. As she grew, the world grew louder with its demands. Specialists told him the surgery she needed, the one that could give her a chance to hear, was far beyond what he could ever afford. The diner he used to work at closed, his bike needed repairs he couldn't pay for, and every time he looked at Sophie's sweet smile he felt like he was failing her, failing the last piece of the woman he loved. Years passed like wind on the highway. Sophie learned to communicate through signs, through smiles, through the gentle way she tugged at Cole's sleeve when she wanted to show him something. She loved the world despite never hearing it, but Cole could not stop imagining what she was missing: the sound of the ocean she loved to watch, the music she danced to without rhythm, the stories he could never truly read to her the way he wanted. His hope was dying quietly, the way light dims when the electricity fades. And then, on a night when exhaustion gnawed at him and Sophie fell asleep in the sidecar wrapped in a tiny pink jacket, he found himself pulling into a diner miles away from home, drawn in only because a neon sign flickered the word "open" like a last lifeline. Inside, the diner was nearly empty, glowing soft with warm lights that hummed above the booths. A few truckers sat hunched over plates, but it was the waitress, Grace Whitlock, who noticed them immediately. She had the kind of presence that made the air feel gentler, as if she had been built from sunlight and patience. She approached with a quiet, steady smile that reminded Cole of someone he once knew, someone he lost. When Grace saw Sophie, curled into her father's leather jacket, she didn't speak loudly or startle her. Instead, she crouched down, tapped gently on the booth, and waited until Sophie looked up. Then, with a surprising fluency, Grace began signing. "Are you hungry, sweetheart?" Cole's breath caught. Most people didn't know sign language. Most didn't even try. But here was a stranger signing to his daughter as if it were second nature. Grace explained that her younger brother had been deaf too, that she grew up interpreting the world for him until he passed away years before. Something in her eyes flickered with that memory, something raw, painful, but tender. While Sophie ate pancakes and Grace quietly made her smile, Cole watched with a heaviness lifting from his shoulders. For the first time in years, someone else understood a part of their world without needing an explanation. Grace offered them warmth without pity, kindness without hesitation. As the hours slipped by, she listened to Cole's struggles, to the impossible cost of the surgery Sophie needed, to the dreams he buried because being a good father demanded everything he had. When the night was nearly gone and the storm had calmed, Grace returned to the table holding a small box wrapped in faded blue ribbon. She set it down carefully, her hands trembling just slightly. She signed to Sophie first, slowly, gently, so she would understand. Then she turned to Cole and said softly, "This belonged to my brother. He never got to use it. I couldn't let it go, until I saw her." Inside the box was a pediatric bone conduction hearing device, far newer than anything Cole had ever seen, and worth more than he could hope to save in years. Cole's stomach dropped. His hands shook as he stared at it. He tried to refuse it, of course he did, but Grace placed her hand over his and told him her brother would have wanted a child like Sophie to have the future he didn't get. They tested it that night. Grace, careful and steady, showed Cole exactly how to place it behind Sophie's ear. The moment it activated was almost too quiet to notice, just a tiny shift in Sophie's expression. Her eyes widened. Her breath caught. Her small hand rose, trembling, as if reaching toward a world she had never known. And then, for the first time in her life, Sophie heard the faint clinking of dishes, the soft hum of the diner lights, and the muffled rumble of her father's shaky breathing. Cole fell apart. Years of guilt, fear, exhaustion, everything broke open inside him as he watched Sophie look around with a wonder so pure it hurt. Grace stood back, tears slipping quietly down her cheek, her hand covering her mouth as if she were watching a miracle unfold. Because she was. They all were. In the days and weeks that followed, Grace became a constant in their lives. She accompanied them to follow-up appointments, translated medical jargon, taught Sophie new ways to explore the world she was just beginning to hear. Cole, slowly and cautiously, realized he was falling for her, not because she saved Sophie, but because she saw them, truly saw them, in a way no one had in years. She became their lighthouse, their quiet rescue from the storm. But the truth Cole never expected was that Grace didn't just save Sophie. She saved him too. As the story nears its end, if this journey touched your heart even just a little, I ask you from the bottom of my soul to please like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs hope today. And before the ending, drop a comment with one thing in your life you're grateful for right now. Grace eventually gave Sophie the gift her brother never got to keep, sound, and with it, a childhood full of laughter, music, and wonder. And she gave Cole something he had thought he no longer deserved, a chance at love, at joy, at a life not defined by struggle but by gratitude. Sophie grew to love the world she finally heard. And Cole, every time he watched her twirl in the backyard to music she once could only imagine, whispered a thank you to the woman who changed their lives with a single act of unbelievable kindness.